Well, the Pentagon has claimed it has no credible evidence of aliens or UFOs. In a rare, open, congressional hearing, the head of the Pentagon's new UFO office, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, or Kirk, as I'm calling him this morning, fits the theme, sort of, said his team was reviewing more than 650 potential UFO cases. So far, they have found no evidence of outer world technology or alien life, admitting only a small percentage of UAPs, as they're known now, unexplained aerial phenomena, display signatures that could reasonably be described as anomalous.
For those few cases that have leaked to the public previously and subsequently commented on by the U.S. government, I encourage those who hold alternative theories or views to submit your research to credible peer-reviewed scientific journals. AARO is working very hard to do the same. That is how science works, not by blog or social media.
Joining me live now, the former US Navy fighter pilot, Ryan Graves. Ryan, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. So what did you make of the evidence or submission from Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick this morning, saying there's no credible evidence of aliens or UFOs?
Well, I think that's pretty reasonable. Sean and the rest of the AARO team is not at a position where they're looking to draw conclusions at this point. They're very much in a data gathering mode, trying to get their arms around the scope of the problem. And the scope of the problem that he's been able to define for us from this hearing is upwards of 650 cases at this point.
So what are they? I mean, he says, again, that line is, it's only a small percentage of UAPs actually display signatures that could reasonably be described as anomalous. So 650. What if they're not anomalous? What are they?
Well, there's potentially behaviors that are being exhibited that fall within what we would consider within the confines of our aircraft, and yet we still aren't able to find what they are. And I think Sean mentioned today how the category balloon-like entities, which sounds rather benign and tidied up, in fact, are not considered solved cases in their book. As we see in the video playing right now, balloon-like entities can display some pretty interesting characteristics.
What's a balloon-like entity?
It's a great question. I think we haven't been fully read into exactly what a balloon-like entity is, but what we've been seeing based off of the conversation today is that the majority of the objects that are being seen are orb-like or spherical in shape. They don't have any type of exhaust in their propulsion systems. How they're being propulsed is unknown at this time. And the origin of these objects is still unknown at this time as well.
And are they manned or unmanned?
They're estimating the size to be between 1 and 4 meters. So I suppose technically it could be possible to fit a human in there. There'd be a
all right, but I mean, it could well be a bunch of students. You know, we saw with the Chinese air balloons recently, it could well be a bunch of students throwing up something for a weather experiment.
I don't think it would have rose to this level of attention. The All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office is there to work on the cases that don't fit the categories that our normal intelligence pipelines or defense pipelines pay attention to.
Yeah.
And sometimes we define what we pay attention to based off of what we expect our adversaries to display. And unfortunately, sometimes they trick us, as we've seen with the recent balloon incident over the continental United States. So we have to be cognizant of those capabilities that are on the edge of what we're expecting.
So, Ryan, I mean, in your intro there, you know, you're a former US Navy fighter pilot. What's your experiences? Tell us about them with UFOs.
Well, certainly. We didn't know what they were initially. We came back from a deployment in 2013, and we entered a maintenance phase when I was an F-18 Super Hornet pilot assigned to VFA-11, the Red Rippers. When we came back, we upgraded our radars to the APG-79. And as soon as we did, we started picking up objects on our radar that we weren't seeing just earlier that day with a different radar. Eventually, we were able to correlate these with our IR, or essentially heat sensors on our aircraft. And eventually, we almost had a near miss with one of these objects at the entrance to our working areas. One of these objects flew right between 2 F-18s from my squadron, and this was actually the first time we were able to gain a visual sighting of the object. And it was described at the time as a dark gray or a black cube inside of a clear sphere.
So what did you think it was at the time? And is that an example of the problems that, you know, these things can pose for fighter jets, but also commercial airliners too?
Yeah, absolutely. So From our perspective, this was now crossing into the threshold of this being a present and imminent aviation safety threat, and we were obligated to submit an aviation safety report to report this potential hazard that could occur. We filed this as a near midair case, and then we began a pattern of reporting these through our aviation safety channels every time there was an incident or a somewhat close aboard pass. We were seeing these practically every day on our sensors as we were looking out over the vast swaths of airspace that we operate in. However, we were typically reporting the ones that were close enough for a visual sighting or potentially pose some type of aviation safety hazard. Often we would have to either train or cancel or move our training due to there being too many of these objects operating in our working areas. And we would also report those as well.
Right. Are you a believer, Ryan? Are we alone?
Well, I certainly believe that there's something operating in our airspace and we don't know what it is. With the different emerging nation states and adversaries we have, we need to be careful that we don't have ourselves taken by surprise by any technology that may be present in these countries. Yeah. I'm also a believer that it would be arrogant to think that we are the only people or only creatures, I'll say, in this vast, vast universe. But we need more data to figure out what these objects are and where they come from. That's the only way we can get to a conclusion.
Okay, the search continues. Ryan, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.